Assalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone, my name is Rika Ramadhani. As a moderator, we are from the third group. The members are Rahma Awaliyah, Rani Nursinta Dewi, Rika Ramadhani, and Rina Nurmalasari. In this occasion, we will present about of NATO, North Atlantic Tready Organization. The material discussion, there are definition and background to the founding of NATO, the purpose of stabilizing and function of NATO, member countries and history development of NATO, role and influence of NATO, and finally, problem solving by NATO. So, let's start. The first presenter is Rahma Awaliyah.
Thank you, moderator. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all here. My name is Rahma Awaliyah, and today I'm going to talk about North Atlantic Tready Organization. My presentation will be in two parts. First, I'd like to talk about definition of North Atlantic Tready Organization. North Atlantic Treaty Organization is a military alliance formed on 4 of April 1949 in Washington, D.C. to deal with the Soviet Union attack on non-communist nations in Western Europe. And then the core of North Atlantic Treaty Organization is agreement of signatory countries to establish a common defense. Moving to my next point. And the second, I'd like to talk about background of the founding of North Atlantic Treaty Organization. After the Second World War, democracy was divided into more understanding, including liberal democracy promoted by the United States and communist democracy promoted by Soviet Union. So, multipolar power system changed to bipolar power system. The United States and Soviet Union as the countries that won at the Second World War had ambition to become a superpower and moved from England and French to Washington and Moscow. An outbreak of the democracy political system and two countries competing to become a great countries has led to influence the world political condition, and then conflict between the United States and Soviet Union peaked at the division of Germany. As a result of Potsdam Conference, Germany divided into four regions: three Western Germany region occupied by the United States with implementing liberalism, while Eastern German region occupied by Soviet Union with implementing communism. And the Berlin Wall is a symbol of two countries. Moreover, the Soviet Union invaded several Eastern European countries, so the United States, with the first commander of the Eisenhower and North Atlantic, held a negotiation with the known as the North Atlantic Treaty in Washington, and result of North Atlantic Treaty was formation the North Atlantic Treaty Organization in April 4 of 1949, with consisting 12 countries in North America and Western Europe to keep peace and build common power against any form of threat from anywhere. I'd like to finish my presentation by thanking you all. Thank you.
Okay, next are the purpose of stabilizing of NATO. There are first to block all influence from the Eastern Bloc led by Soviet Union. So NATO is defense pact organization formed on the basis of an agreement with the Western Bloc in an effort to prevent the communist ideology of the Soviet Union from spreading throughout Europe. The Cold War that occurred between the United States and Soviet Union contained competition and the spread of ideologies from each side. America with ideology are liberal capitalists, while the Soviet Union are social communists. So, NATO was established to block any influence from the Eastern Bloc led by Soviet Union. Second, to protect the allies from the United States in Western Europe from possible Soviet attack. So, countries that design become of a NATO member believe that the United States is the initiator of NATO. So, they hope to make the Soviet Union retain if one day intend to attack. NATO also start NATO also stated that the parties that join must agree to form a peaceful government in line with the goals of United Nations, creating stability and prosperity in the North Atlantic regions. And the third, to create regional stability, especially the Western European region, by ensuring the security, freedom, and independence of NATO member states. And fourth, to advance democratic principle and the growth of democratic institutions in the North Atlantic region. And next, function of NATO. There are first, resolve disputes peacefully. So, the event of One World War and Second World War have the same cause, namely disputes between countries. Disputes that are not resolved by means of deliberation are finally resolved on the battlefield. So, to prevent the return of the war, dispute between countries must be resolved by means of negotiation. That's where the role of NATO is needed because it has the power to regulate each of its members by means of the agreed agreement. And second, helping each other and defending fellow NATO member states. So, the function NATO is to help each other and defend fellow NATO member countries, where if there is a member country that is attacked by another, the attacker is considered an attack that is shown to other member countries and even to NATO itself. And third, avoid the use of violence and military threats in international relations. So, in international relations, there are often disputes between two or more countries, and if they are not resolved by negotiation, the settlement of these disputes can be use violence and even the military strength of each country. That's where NATO function as a guarantor of security. And last, eliminate international economic political disputes. The political and economic sector is main sector of important sector for each country. So that the elimination of international political and economic dispute is important to maintain harmonious relation between each country. NATO, with the foundation of maintaining peace and security, has the authority to eliminate these disputes, especially for the countries that are members of NATO. Okay, thank you. Next presenter is Rina Nurmalasari.
Next, I will discuss about NATO member country. NATO member country consists of 30 member country. In this slide, there is a list of member country of NATO sorted by year of joining. The countries that first joined NATO were Belgium, Canada, Denmark, France, Iceland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Norway, Portugal, the United Kingdom, and the United States. NATO membership is open to any other European state in a position to further the principle of this treaty and to contribute to the security of the North Atlantic area. NATO also has what it calls the Membership Action Plan. It helps aspiring members prepare to membership and meet key requirements by providing practical advice and targeted assistance. Next slide. Next is history of NATO. The founding member of NATO signed the North Atlantic Treaty on April 4, 1949. It worked in conjunction with the United Nations, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. The organization was created during the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference. NATO's primary purpose was to defend member nations from threat by communist countries. The United States also wanted to maintain a presence in Europe. It sought to prevent a resurgence of aggressive nationalism and foster political union. In this way, NATO made the reformation of the European Union possible. US military protection gave European nations the safety need to rebuild after World War II devastation. After West Germany joined NATO, the communist country formed the Warsaw Pact Alliance. They included the USSR, Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and East Germany. In response, NATO adopted the massive retaliation policy. It promised to use nuclear weapons if the pact attacked. NATO deterrence policy allowed Europe to focus on economic development. It didn't have to build large conventional army. The Soviet Union continued to build its military presence by the end of the Cold War. It was spending 3 times what the United States was with only third of the economic power. When the Berlin Wall fell in 1989, it was due to economic as well as ideological reasons. After the USSR dissolved in the late 1980, NATO relationship with Russia thawed. In 1977, they signed the NATO-Russia Founding Act to build bilateral cooperation. In 2002, they formed the NATO-Russia Council to partner on shared security issues. The collapse of the USSR led to unrest in its former satellite state. NATO got involved when Yugoslavia civil war became genocide. NATO initial support of the United Nations naval embargo led to the enforcement of no-fly zone. Violation when led to a few airstrikes until September 1999. That's when NATO conducted a 9-day air campaign that ended the war. By December of that year, NATO deployed a peacekeeping force of 60,000 soldiers. That ended in 2004 when NATO transferred this function to the European Union. That's my presentation. Continue to the next presenter.
Next, about the role of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The role of NATO during the Cold War era was to defend Europe politically and militarily from the threat of attacks by the Soviet Union and communist countries that were members of the Warsaw at first, after the end of the Cold War and the collapse of the Soviet Union. NATO has a role as a joint defense and security institution with Europa country and help if one of the countries is under military attack. NATO is being preferring to a common defense system aimed at cultivating democratic value and helping member states to work together on defense and security issues. to solve calm problems, build trust, and prevent conflict. Next, influence of NATO to the world. NATO as an international organization has great influence not only for its member country, but also in the international world. In practice today, NATO is very much influenced by the dominance of the United States, as if NATO is a tool to achieve U.S. interests. This is one of the internal dynamic of NATO, which is one of the obstacles in completing its text. Next, to Indonesia. First, assessing and maintaining the security of Indonesia state. Second, help if a disaster occurs in Indonesia. Third, cooperating with each other in military and intelligence matters so that information can be exchanged. Next, about problem solving by NATO. One, after the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, the president of United States, Jimmy Carter, began massive military development. This effort was intensive by the people region government to increase to output. The military. This is what makes the military budget large. Two, NATO decided to install cruise missiles and MGM-31 testing in Europe, especially West Germany. These missiles are aimed at close range to Moscow. Three, NATO launched massive bombing against Serbian military targets because Serbia wants to include Kosovo as part of the Federation of Serbian powers and carry out non-violent civilian development. This has led NATO to launch bombs against Serbian military targets. The careful pilot, who served as Federal President of Yugoslavia, agreeing to withdraw from Kosovo, and NATO peacekeeping forces entered the area. The last withdrawal of allied troops from Afghanistan, as well as long-term assistance after troop withdrawals. In this meeting, the leaders of the state must seek agreement on the issue. Thank you.
Finally, that's all our presentation. And now we are open a question session. For all audience who have any question are welcome, and for your question can put via emails. Finally, may be useful. I'm sorry for my mistake. See you. Wassalamu'alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.